kind of embarrassing to admit, but I might have even slept with an empty 30-30 a few times. I was that fascinated with the whole idea of it. Yeah, you just need to get a shotgun, and if you got somebody breaking in your house, just fire it in the air, Well, as an attorney, I can tell you that that's called aggravated assault, and it's a felony. You'll lose your gun rights. John Wick is essentially like watching a 3-gun stage, except with people instead of targets. Competitive shooting, there's just is not a better test of equipment or man. At the top levels, 1 or 2 misses is the difference between winning and losing. It's pretty fascinating to realize, how many millions of acres we are really blessed to have in this country, and there's so few people that get to see it. This is True Pearce, and you're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Put down your latte and pull on your boots.
You and I and everybody listening to this owns 640 million acres.
I think he killed more deer drinking his coffee, smoking a cigarette in the pickup truck than I did spending all that time freezing my butt off.
Something that I would hope is that people realize that those are wild animals and they have savage natures.
I look forward to packing animals out. I look forward to that pain of success.
Doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter where you live. I've said it before, and you know what? I'll say it again louder for the people in the back. Your present circumstance should not limit your passions.
This is Jay Scott of the Jay Scott Outdoors podcast.
Hey, this is Ryan Callahan.
Hi, this is Jules McLean.
Hey everybody, Jason Carter here with Epic Outdoors.
Hey guys, this is Tim Burnett with Solo Hunter.
You're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of The Wild Initiative, brought to you as part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective. All right, also getting on to today's episode. I'm excited to have True Pearce, hunter, competitive shooter. You got a lot going on, man. I don't even know the full gamut of how to introduce you, but I'm really glad to have you on the call today, man.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So one thing I always like to start out with is just really kind of an introduction of kind of who you are. And then how did you get introduced to the world of firearms and hunting and the outdoors?
Wow, that's sort of a loaded question. And I suppose we can take the airplane view of who I am. Like I told you before, my name's True Pearce, and I'm sort of a normal outdoor guy that has really sort of ingrained myself in the outdoor world. I grew up on a cattle ranch, working my butt off and hunting and shooting and all that good stuff. But I started getting into competitive shooting in college, and of course I hunted as well then. But I got into competitive shooting. I started with building AR-15s, and this is a long time ago before there was a million YouTube videos on how to do it. In fact, there wasn't one back then, and we used black and white sheets of paper to figure out how to do it, and they had plastic hand guards, and this was back before AR-15s were cool. And then I would shoot service class, which is with a sling and iron sights out to 600 yards, with an AR-15, and I got okay at that. And then I kind of got more excited about really long range stuff and switched to F class, which was shooting a 308 out to 1,000 yards. And then I sort of just progressed into handgun, and then I found my real passion, which was 3-gun. And the sort of the interesting thing about that is as I got better as a shooter, I realized that my hunting skills improved greatly as well. I was a lot more confident in the field hunting and that kind of thing. And we can certainly go back to that later. But as far as that goes, I didn't want to be a rancher because you're pretty much tied to a ranch 365 days a year. And I wanted the ability to be able to hunt in the fall and to go shoot matches and to be more involved in the outdoor world. I ended up going to law school, and I taught a lot of shooting courses and force-on-force type courses, and I sort of specialized in that as an attorney. And I still do practice criminal law part-time. I just did a big jury trial with some life sentences involved just within the last couple months. And I'm still in court on a fairly regular basis. But a couple years ago, I actually joined the team over at Guns America, and I'm now the editor at Guns America and the editor of Hunt 365, which is their hunting magazine. So that's kind of the airplane overview of who I am. And whatnot. Is that, hopefully that's what you were looking for?
That's exactly what I was looking for. I love that you talk about the service class rifles. You know, everyone thinks about shooting competitions, and I think immediately everyone goes to three gun when they think competitive shooting, just because it's like the exciting thing that everyone sees the YouTube videos of. And I'm sure we've all seen the ones of Keanu Reeves doing his thing before training for John Wick and all that.
Sure.
But I love that you mentioned service class competitions, because that's when I started shooting. I didn't do a ton of competitions, but that's what I fell in love with. And I never got around to building my own service class AR-15, but I did place in a couple of small, like, regional competitions using my Grand.
Right.
So
that's cool.
That was my favorite, man. Is just pulling out those vintage rifles, those old pieces, and still being able to shoot like hell with them. So it's cool. That's kind of where you got your start. But
sure. Well, I mean, and you know, to be fair, it's not like I suddenly picked up a gun at that point. I mean, guns are definitely part of the culture. I mean, I'm a long time American, if we put it that way. I had a lot of ancestors on the Mayflower, and a lot of ancestors that came west. In fact, my great grandfather was one of the original 26 Arizona Rangers that sort of, you know, settled and was law enforcement in Arizona. And so, you know, I mean, I grew up hearing stories about Indians and rifles and bad guys and cowboys, and yeah, it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I might have even like slept with an empty 30-30 a few times as like a 7 or 8 year old, just because, you know, I was that fascinated with the whole idea of it. And my dad was certainly, he taught me well. He kept me safe, and I certainly was responsible. I wasn't some irresponsible kid running around with a gun, but, yeah, in fact, to start with, you know, when he was with me, he'd let me take a 22 out, but when I'd be 7 or 8 years old, he'd send me out with a 410 single shot shotgun, because he wasn't worried about whether I could hit a cow a mile away with that. And and I'd roam the irrigation ditches and shoot muskrats that were just, you know, wreak havoc on the irrigation ditches. So yeah, I'd put in a few miles every morning running around with a 410 single shot shotgun, and I saved my money. And eventually, when I turned 12, he let me buy my own repeater 22, but he was kind of insistent on starting out with a single shot. He felt like it made better shooters. And I think he's probably right. So, but yeah, you know, it's sort of been a lifelong passion. I mean, I can't remember a time when I wasn't shooting a BB gun or a cap gun or the real thing. So
I'm actually, so I've got your Instagram open right now, and I'm actually, you know, you're talking about your dad, and Father's Day wasn't too long ago, and I'm just looking at your Father's Day post you got up here, and it's, you know, I'll have to post a link to this picture, because it is the greatest shot of, I'm assuming that's you and your dad with the fishing pole, and both y'all in the cowboy hats, and
Yep.
I mean, this is like straight out of the Andy Griffith Show right here. It's fantastic.
Well, you know, but what that picture doesn't show is that we're in the Idaho wilderness, and we'd ridden horses in there, you know, 10 or 12 miles to be to where we were at right there. And, you know, I was probably 5 or 6 years old. I don't know how old I was in that picture, but I'm packing the sheath knife, though.
Yep.
So,
yep, you got that fixed blade right on the belt. I love it.
Yep.
So, I mean, you were pretty much like, this wasn't necessarily, yeah, you walked around with the 410 and all, but I mean, you were thrust right into the backcountry as a kid then.
Well, so my dad ranched, right? We had horses and cows, and believe it or not, I mean, we didn't have it when I was a kid, he didn't have a lot of money, and we didn't have a tractor, and we didn't have a 4-wheel drive pickup, and we get snow here in Idaho. And so, I mean, you know, we would have to feed when there was snow with a draft horse, so a couple wagon and that kind of thing. So, I mean, I sort of have a greater understanding of the generation before me as far as how they used to do things. But yeah, we would I was obsessed with hunting and fishing and backcountry. And so, yeah, we would take trips and head up to the mountains and go ride horses. And I mean, I remember one day, and I don't remember how old I was. I was probably closer to 12, but we took a trip in, and I think we did close to 60 miles round trip in one day on backcountry trails. I mean, it was a long, hard day, and to some people that sounds crazy, but we had horses that were in shape, and we got up in the dark and got back to camp at like 11:30 at night after having just trotted horses all day long. And I don't know, we saw something like 30 lakes, in one day. So, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I've been doing it a long time, I guess, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and it's, a lot of the times I feel like it's a lot of people that grew up in it. They didn't get that true experience in the backcountry until they were a lot older. So it's interesting seeing the difference and hearing about that. And, one of the things I love, you're talking about, seeing all those lakes and doing all those miles on horseback through those trails. And I was out fly fishing this weekend, and I wasn't all that far from the road. It was just a little drive down from the highway even, but I was just talking with some folks that I ran into there, and we were talking about how some people will never have that experience. I mean, we're not even talking about seeing, a bunch of backcountry lakes on horseback, 60 miles a day or whatever it is, even just what's off the road. So many people miss out on, and it almost makes you a little sad, but then it makes you feel proud that you've gotten to go out and have those experiences.
Well, I mean, honestly, like I wish that I could have those experiences every single day, but it's really hard to make a living, in the backcountry. And, so, yeah, but I mean, I look forward to trips back, and I try and go see new lakes I haven't seen. And, what's really crazy, I mean, that was a long time ago now that I was doing that. And believe it or not, it would be almost impossible to do a big trip like that now, because the trails now are so bad. They haven't been maintained. There's not as many people. At least when you get back in there, there's a lot of deadfall. Our forests haven't been managed well. And so honestly, now a hard day in the backcountry might be 20 miles because you're fighting over, deadfall and bad trails and leading horses up around, rock slides that no one's done anything about for years. And it's really kind of unfortunate that we have, we had such an awesome horse trail system in our mountains, and we've just sort of allowed the Forest Service to shut them down. In fact, if you go back and look at old GPS maps, I've still got some that I can load on my GPS. There's trails all over them that don't exist anymore. And if you're, willing to sort of go through some nasty deadfall, sometimes you can still find parts of them, and you can get into areas that nobody's been in 40, 50 years, maybe. It's pretty fascinating to realize, how many millions of acres we are really blessed to have in this country. And there's so few people that get to see it.
So what do you think the issue is then? Why are we losing these trails and everything?
Well, I mean, look, I didn't come on here to get into politics or share mine, but I mean, the truth of the matter is that there's certainly a group of people that have taken conservation to the extreme, and I think we probably call it environmentalism. And they want people out of the mountains. They don't want hunters. They don't want fishermen. They don't want horsemen. They don't want hikers or campers. They just don't want us in there. And as a result of it, they're shutting down trails. They're closing roads. I have a buddy that's a prosecutor here in Idaho, and they're looking at having to sue in a small county, and they're looking at having to spend a fortune to sue the Forest Service because by emergency declaration, they've closed a main trail for the last 10 years in a row. Every year they just do it by emergency declaration, and the Constitution, at least the way it's been interpreted, requires what we call due process, where they have, a public meeting and comments, and they actually have to sort of justify their actions, and they're illegally doing this stuff, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, we could get into that, but I don't want to bore everybody with the legal details. But
I find it super interesting, and it's cool hearing your perspective on it because you are so steeped in the outdoors, yet it's you also come from a place of knowledge of the actual laws behind it. I mean,
right.
You're a lawyer. You know, it's you don't get that combination, I think, quite as often. So I mean, I personally find it interesting.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, it's unfortunate because, you know, I mean, we have lost a lot of access and ultimately, you know, I mean, regardless of how you feel about wolves or grizzly bears, I mean, ultimately the problem is that if we have those, there is not the game for people to hunt. And, you know, hunters sort of have, you know, we're both predators. Man is a predator as a hunter, and so are wolves and grizzly bears. And there's a reason the early settlers killed them off to the point of extinction in our western states, and that's because they're devastating to game and to livestock and livelihoods and everything else. And so we reintroduce those, and you watch, it will get to the point where we don't have the herds to be able to hunt them. Mm-hmm. So. And it's not like they're in any danger of being extinct in Canada or Alaska. And in fact, amazingly enough, you know, before they reintroduced Canadian wolves to Idaho, we actually had a native Idaho timber wolf, and the Canadian wolves that they reintroduced killed those off. So we actually finished that species off by reintroducing Canadian wolves. So kind of a interesting topic. And man, see this, we can just bounce. I mean, we could be talking about something else here in 30 seconds, but
well, and you know, we both know, okay, so protection of the grizzly bears, the reintroduction of wolves, and then the degradation of these herds of wild game species. As that continues on, like you said, it can easily result in us having not enough animals to hunt. And we know what happens. We definitely both know what happens when we start losing those funds from hunting, from the Pittman-Robertson Act. Suddenly, you know, more degradation of our national forests. Things start getting sold off because we don't have funds to upkeep them or to fight fires or to do, you know, to effectively pay for all of these conservation. And what happens then? You know, people, it sounds like a slippery slope argument, but it's really not. I mean, It's just the plain truth of it all.
Right. Well, and you know, the less people that have access and you know, your forest. I mean, and look, I'll be honest with you, we have the Frank Church Wilderness here in Idaho. It's one of the biggest wilderness areas in the entire country, and it's very unhealthy. I mean, there's deadfall everywhere. There's bugs in the trees. It's just a mess. You ride a trail, and I mean, 2 years ago I was in there and we had a storm while we were riding, and we didn't get back to camp till 3:30 in the morning because we had trees fall over the trail behind us that we couldn't get back through. And I mean, just it's a mess. It's not healthy, and yet, you know, they've made it illegal to have any sort of motorized anything in there. They can't clean it up with a chainsaw. They can't go in and fight fires. I mean, they have to haul out human excrement when firefighters go in. I mean, we've taken this to the extreme, to the point where, you know, they don't allow mining or logging, and, you know, and people don't like to go in and see a mountain that's been logged. But the truth is that if you've never seen a mountain that's burned, it's much healthier to be logged than to just be scorched at 1600 degrees and have the roots burn under the ground, and the erosion and the fish it kills in the rivers. And I mean, it's a mess when it burns. So point is that it could be managed better, I guess. And it would be better for the game herds, for people, for access, for income, for states. There's just really not a good excuse for doing things the way that it's being done. So,
well, people we tend to be of such extremes, you know, as people, I feel like, that it's hard for anyone to imagine that there's a happy medium between complete hands-off, you know, advocation of no use of the land or no touching the land. There's the only other option then is completely clear cutting the entire forest. Right. It's like, no, there is like a lot in between there.
Yep.
And it's amazing. And people don't realize, you know, you mentioned it with that deadfall. Like, so often we've gotten to the point now where we immediately put out these fires, and we don't allow the healthy fires to come through these wild areas. But then when a big fire comes through, there's so much, like you mentioned, nothing's cleared. There's so much deadfall. There's so much undergrowth and so much fuel for this.
Yep.
That what would have been a normal healthy fire that's like the course of nature that helps trees and helps everything.
Yep.
Suddenly burns so hot it destroys the forest.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's it exactly. And it's a big mess. And look, fires happen naturally. I mean, lightning happens, storms happen, this kind of stuff happens. And I'm not suggesting that it shouldn't happen. I'm just simply saying that we've done such a poor job of managing at this point that when they do happen, they're just devastating to the game, to the fish in the streams. I mean, I was up looking at, after a big fire here a couple of years ago, and the streams, I mean, they were like running mud, black. They were black. They're just full of charcoal and mud because literally everything that holds the dirt to the mountain was gone. And, rain just washes the dirt, mud, charcoal into the water. And I mean, it's not healthy for anything living in the water either.
Well, so I'm going to change gears here before I start getting super frustrated. It's one of those things like I could sit and talk about it, and I'm just gonna start getting angry.
Sure.
But so you talked. You mentioned kind of earlier when we were talking that as you started getting more into the competitive shooting, you saw that really affecting your hunting. What are maybe some of the ways you saw that? Saw the world of competitive shooting translating over into what you do in the hunting world?
So, I mean, let me start it out with sort of this precursor that, look, to be a good sportsman and to be ethical when you take an animal's life, I mean, I truly believe that you need to be skilled. I mean, you shouldn't. I hear guys talk about, I've been using the same rifle for 30 years and I go out and shoot one shot to make sure it's still zeroed and I go kill my animal. And I guess I feel like good for you. I'm glad that's worked so far, but I also hear stories about people wounding animals. I've found wounded animals myself. And I think we have a duty. And it can certainly happen to anyone. We can have bullets fail or whatever, but I think we have a duty to put the time in and practice and make sure that we're competent, that our gear is up to the task, that it's going to work. And I guess competitive shooting, there's just is not a better test of equipment or man. When you add a timer and you have to shoot in weird positions and you have to be patient and you have to be looking at wind and drop and you have to think about all these things, and misses cost you time. And at the top levels, one or two misses is the difference between winning and losing. And, even shooting at like 300 yards with a semi-automatic rifle that's all tricked out with an optic and a muzzle brake. And you can laugh and say a muzzle brake on a 223. Well, yeah, it helps. It helps you spot your shot. It helps you recover faster for the next one. But, one miss equates to about a second and a half by the time your brain can process where you impacted, readjust, rehold, and make a decent trigger pull. I mean, you're talking about a full second and a half at minimum. If you're good, if you're a top level competitor, it's that much. So the point is that I guess it's taught me a lot of patience. It's taught me to build positions quickly. It's taught me to wait for a shot and not break the trigger just because I feel like I have to, because something's going to change. It gives you confidence in your gear, your equipment, your abilities, your skills. You're out shooting thousands of rounds a year versus, making sure your old 30-06 is still zeroed. I shot. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, here's something else too that I think as sportsmen, we like to take the credit. We like to be like, oh yeah, well, we pay for conservation. Puff out our chests a little bit. And,
sure. And we do. Let's be fair. We do. It doesn't come out of your regular income taxes. It comes out of what we spend on guns and ammo.
I was going to say, I should say as hunters, we like to puff out our chests. But I'll tell you what, you want to know who really is the ones paying for conservation? It's all you guys doing the 3-gun matches and all this stuff who are dumping thousands of rounds of ammunition. Right. I mean, as a hunter, what do? I maybe go, just as a hunter, I maybe go through a box of ammo, prepping for the season, sighting in maybe 2 boxes, if I'm feeling really frisky. in a season, what do I go through? In theory, hopefully like 1 round per hunt, but
right.
How much am I really spending? So what, maybe 3 boxes of ammo a year at most for, as a hunter?
Right.
That, let's face it. We both know where the money's coming from.
Sure. Well, and but I mean, look, I think though that shooting's fun. It's a good sport. It's a good hobby. I much prefer it to golfing. I mean, I've golfed before a couple times, and I'd much rather go shoot guns. And yeah, you can look at it however you want as, hey, this is my shooting is adding to conservation. But I really do honestly believe that it will make anyone a better shooter. It's going to make you better in self-defense situations. And not to get into totally different direction, but I was out. We were out chasing bears a few years ago, and not actually hunting them to shoot them. All I had was a handgun, and I had a bear come after me, charge me at like 6 feet, and I ended up having to draw a handgun and shoot it at close range. And I mean, I can tell you that I just shot a huge pistol championship the week before, like a state championship, and I didn't even have to think about what to do or what happened, and I stayed cool. And I mean, it really is. You're just getting in a lot of repetition for exactly what we do in the field and getting efficient. So,
I was going to say that's always the big thing people talk about when it comes to bear attacks is, okay, do you really want to use a pistol if you're not going to be quick and accurate? Because those attacks happen in like split second in an instant.
Oh yeah.
And, I'm not sure how much my listeners totally know about competitive shooting, but effectively, you're standing there doing your thing. And the second that buzzer goes off, you're going like it's down to the millisecond, right?
Yep. Yeah, the shot timer. So they've got really sophisticated shot timers now that they time from the time that buzzer goes off, and they can measure every single split. So they hear every single gunshot, and they can measure them to the 100th of a second. And oftentimes pistol matches are won by tenths of a second. I mean, it's yeah. So, I mean, people are getting really, really efficient at moving and shooting and hitting and drawing and even if you're not a top level world champion competitor, anything you go do is going to improve you. I mean, you don't have to be winning to go become better at all the things that we're talking about. If you go shoot one match, you're going to improve your skills in the field, your confidence, everything else.
So for people that aren't as familiar with like the different types of matches, maybe tell me a little bit about what is a 3-gun match. It may seem obvious, I guess, but got a lot of people that have zero experience except what they've seen in John Wick.
Okay. Well, and to be fair, I mean, look, John Wick is essentially like watching a 3-gun stage, except with people instead of targets. And that's kind of a gruesome movie, but I mean, that really is kind of what it is. So 3-gun is where you have usually a semi-automatic handgun, a semi-automatic rifle, and a shotgun. And it can be semi-automatic or pump. There's different divisions for gear. And so if you're getting started, you don't need to go buy a bunch of stuff. Bring what you have. I mean, the first matches I shot with a Remington 870 pump shotgun that didn't hold enough shells. But I learned stuff, right? And eventually you'll want to get into something better. But the point is it's not, you're not going to lose or because you don't have good enough gear your first matches. It's going to be because you don't have any idea what you're doing and you don't have the skill set yet to be competitive. And so there's no reason to go spend money on new gear. Shoot what you've got until that's what's holding you back is really the best advice I give people. But here's to put it in a nutshell, they set up courses and they'll tell you ahead of time, okay, those targets over there have to be shot with a pistol. Those targets over there have to be shot with a shotgun. Those targets, right here have to be shot with a rifle. And so with your rifle, you might be shooting targets at literally the end of your barrel, 2 feet away from you out to, I think the furthest shot I've ever had on a regular AR-15 at a match was 700 yards. So with just a regular AR-15, and that's what they're, it was a large target, but that's what they're expecting you to shoot on the clock. And it's common to have, at least out west, in the east it's a little different, but at least out west it's common to have shots to 300 and 400 yards at our bigger matches. So And then, handgun, same thing. We shoot steel, paper, whatever somebody can concoct up and dream up as a target, gets shot. And, it's not common, but, at the old Ironman matches, we'd see pistol targets out to 150 yards. So, it just depends. Some of the bigger matches also will have bonus rifles where you'll shoot a bonus rifle out to 1,000 yards. I think one match had a bonus rifle that was there, it was provided at the match. You didn't have to bring your own, but I think we shot to 1,500 with that rifle. So, we're talking about a really large skill set here that you have to be good at. You not only have to be able to shoot a rifle well, you got to be able to shoot a handgun and a shotgun. There's often flying clays mixed in with slug targets. And so you're shooting slugs at 60, 80, 100 yards sometimes right after you just got done shooting like some sort of flying clays course type shots. So you have to be well-rounded, I guess, is the point. So three gunners, they may not be able to go straight to a PRS match and win, but they'd be competitive. But they'd be more competitive than someone that hadn't shot three gun, I guess, is what I would tell you. So, this well-rounded is really kind of is what you have to be good at three gun.
It's kind of the jack of all trades of the competitive firearms grouping, I guess.
It is. It really is. It really is. Your gear has to work. If you're having malfunctions, you're out. You're not going to win anything. So your gear working, you got to know how to hand load. Look, I bet I loaded 20,000, 25,000 rounds of pistol last year alone. And, if you don't know how to hand load, you're going to have problems. And I don't think I had a single malfunction with handgun last year. So, you just have to know a lot about all this stuff, and it translates over into being a better hunter.
So do you, just out of curiosity, do you hand load all your hunting rounds as well?
I do. So let me back that up. Most of the time as the editor for a gun magazine, obviously I get sent guns to test, and I make assignments to writers and stuff. But, for example, last year I went on a hunt with Sig Sauer to Colorado. I loaded up horses and drove my horse trailer and horses to Colorado. They didn't have an outfitter or any professional people there telling him what to do. We bought over the counter tags, and we went into the Colorado wilderness where I'd never been where we went before. And we used their new Sig Cross rifle and their new ammo. So, obviously I didn't hand load that ammo, and in those situations I don't, but for my own stuff and when I go out and hunt, yeah, I hand load my own ammo. So I tailor it to my gun and make sure that it shoots as good as it possibly can shoot and is consistent. And I just don't feel like I can buy ammo that's as good as what I can make.
So if somebody wants to, say somebody's coming out, and especially I feel like I've gotten this question a lot recently from people on both sides of the political aisle. They've reached out and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about buying my first gun. I want to learn to shoot. I want to get into shooting. Without too much commentary on what's going on, it's just we're living in a crazy world right now. So I think it's
absolutely
on people's mind.
Yep.
Somebody that literally just wants to learn how to shoot a gun. They don't know if they want to shoot a shotgun, a pistol, or a rifle, or anything. They come up to you. You have somebody reaching out. They're like, I just want to start shooting. How would you start them out? Where would you kind of send them? What would you tell them to do initially?
Okay, so look, obviously, what they want to, the reason they want to shoot is going to be the first thing that I need to find out. So, for example, just yesterday, I had a lady that was 70 something years old say, "Hey, I need a gun. I'm scared. I want to be able to protect myself." Well, because of her age and the reason, her purposes that for wanting a gun, obviously, certain guns are just not an option for her. Right. Because of physical strength and all that. If somebody wants to start shooting competitively, if they've never shot a gun, if they're young and strong and they think that this might be some sort of a lifetime hobby, then the generic answer is start with a handgun every time. Go find a 9mm, Glock, Smith & Wesson, Springfield Armory, Sig, Ruger. All the major manufacturers make excellent 9mm handguns. Go find one that you like. and start shooting. And the reason I tell you that is because handguns are the cheapest to shoot. If you go look at the cost of 50 rounds of handgun ammunition compared to the cost of 50 rounds of rifle ammunition, rifle ammunition is 2 or 3 times the price. The other advice I would give them, if it's just, I just want to sort of learn how, I don't know how serious I'm about this, I don't care about self-protection or hunting, well, by all means, go buy a rimfire. You know, a 22 rifle, a 22 pistol, there's a ton of great options out there. And you can go learn how to shoot for cheap, have fun, and teach your kids to shoot. And then eventually you're going to want to move into something, obviously, that's got a little more knockdown power. But 22 rimfires, those sorts of things are great training tools. I mean, like we talked about before, it's really what I learned on. And I grew up shooting an old single shot 22 rifle with iron sights on it. And, I mean, that's where I learned about marksmanship and how to pull a trigger. So I still think that it's a really acceptable and excellent way to learn how to shoot today. But it just depends on your purpose. If your goal is not to go have fun, your goal is you want to protect yourself in your house, then a handgun's pretty tough to beat.
So this is, this is my question. And I get everybody, and I think you've probably gotten this too, where immediately everyone's like, thinks home protection. And they're like, oh, I need to get myself a shotgun. But you're saying, okay, well, if you're looking for self-protection, home protection, you should get a pistol. What's your reasoning behind that?
Well, look, I mean, it obviously everybody's different. And so to just throw out a blanket answer that makes sense for every person listening may not make any sense. But I mean, the advantage of a handgun is that oftentimes state laws, depending on what state you're in, are advantageous for handguns, meaning you can get a permit, means you can carry it concealed and loaded. If you need to, you can stick it in your car because, look, I mean, who's to say that people are going to be in your house? Maybe you just got out of your car, you just pull into your driveway, you've got groceries in your back seat, you pull into your driveway, it's dark outside, and you get your groceries out and start walking towards your front door. Well, I mean, if you're a bad guy, that's a great time to get you. You don't have your keys out. You can't get into your house fast. You can't get on your cell phone. Your arms are full. And look, if you've got a handgun, you can carry that on your body concealed. It can be in your car. You can take it with you. It's not in your house next to the, in the gun safe. And so handguns are just extremely versatile because of how easy they are to conceal, the amount of ammunition they hold. I mean, look, I'll be completely honest with you. If I was in my house and I knew that I was going to have bad guys come kick down my door, I would not choose a shotgun or a pistol. I would absolutely want an AR-15 in my hands. So if you really believe that you're going to be defending your home, then a pistol is not the right answer, and neither is a shotgun. I absolutely would want an AR-15 with high-capacity magazines. So once again, there's not really a blanket way of saying, yeah, this is what you should have, because everyone's needs and wants and fears are different. And
I'll admit that was kind of a loaded question because I pretty much knew you were going to answer it exactly that way.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's just, it's one of those things. It's really funny because I feel like people for some reason immediately go like, oh, I need a shotgun. And I think it's probably, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think it's probably because they imagine, okay, it's got a wide spread. It's not necessarily going to go through walls or anything, and they think, oh, I can just shoot this anywhere and it's going to be accurate, which I don't think people realize.
There's a huge misconception about shotguns. And look, I mean, they're a very versatile tool. I'm not knocking a shotgun at all. I mean, because you can get birdshot, you can get buckshot, you can get slugs. And let's just be fair here. I mean, slugs are huge. They're the bore of or diameter of your shotgun in width. They're enormous. They're shooting a huge chunk of lead at high speeds. They're going to go through all the walls in your house. If you go to buckshot, I mean, depending on what you get, I mean, you're talking about sending out like 30-06 projectiles all the way through your house. I mean, they're going to penetrate right through your walls. Birdshot, surprisingly, penetrates pretty far through, drywall. If you ever go test it and see, it's not nearly as I mean, look, it's going to be better than buckshot, but here's the biggest problem with shotguns is that they're big and long, and they recoil hard, and they're slow to reload, and they don't hold very much ammo. So that's sort of one of the biggest problems. And contrary to Hollywood and popular belief, they don't spread and take out 8 people at a time. And you can't just point one at a room and expect the guy in the corner to get shot. At like 12 feet, birdshot is still about the size of your fist. As far as size, you still have to aim it. I'd much rather make precision shots with an AR-15 and have 30 rounds and have it be easier to point and shoot and control and not have the recoil and, not have to reload it.
Yeah, man, but you don't need an AR-15 for home defense. We all know that. That's what CNN tells me.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because there's a video clip of Joe Biden, and I remember when he did this, he told everybody, you just need to get a shotgun, and if you got somebody breaking in your house, just fire it in the air, Well, as an attorney, I can tell you that that's called aggravated assault, and it's a felony. You'll lose your gun rights over doing something like that. If you're going to fire a gun, you need to be justified in taking someone's life, whether you hit him or not.
Mm-hmm.
And just, his advice is not good advice. In fact, there's a story a few years ago of a guy in Washington that did exactly that. He had someone breaking into his car, and so he stepped out and fired his shotgun in the air, and they charged him. And that was his defense, is Joe Biden said I could. So don't do that.
I want to make that a t-shirt. I really do want to make that a t-shirt. Just the quote, Joe Biden said I could.
Right.
With like a shotgun underneath it.
Yep.
Somebody's going to steal that idea, and I'm going to be super bummed out that I didn't do that.
It's probably what will happen.
There we go. Yeah, no, I remember that. And the one thing that also I always remembered, I'm like, okay, if I'm breaking into someone's house and I hear them, set off whatever 2 rounds into the air, well, also that's a bummer for their ceiling. I'm thinking to myself, okay, the likelihood, if this dude's just setting off 2 rounds in the air, the likelihood he's some crazy person with a double-barreled shotgun, now is the time for me to kick down the door, because he is completely out of ammunition. That was my first thought when I heard that advice from him. He's like, oh yeah, just buy yourself a double-barreled shotgun, shoot both rounds into the air. So clearly you're then unloaded and you have no defense against the guy kicking down your door. Sounds like a great idea.
Right. And I don't know about you, but when I get up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., I'd always have shotgun shells on me. Those, I sleep with those in my pajamas pockets, how do you carry shotgun shells to even reload?
Well, so. I would say that's totally ridiculous, but I found all sorts of shells in random clothing pockets and piled in laundry. So it would not surprise me if I did wash some shotgun shells and they ended up in a pajama pocket, but you never know.
Well, yeah, but generally speaking, shotguns are hard to load. It's hard to store ammo for them in places that you can access them to reload. You talked about John Wick earlier. You see those caddies, those are like what we use in 3-gun. You got these caddies holding shotgun shells in a specific orientation all over your body, because if they're not in that specific orientation, they're a real pain in the butt to load. And if you've got the right caddies and you've practiced, yeah, you can load a shotgun fast, but nobody's wearing those caddies to bed. Let's just be clear about that.
I bet there are some dudes in Hawaiian shirts right now that are wearing those caddies to bed, but that's a whole different rabbit hole. I'm not going down on this podcast.
Fair enough.
Oh man, I'm sure we could have a whole additional hour of conversation about that.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't.
Oh man, that's some other day. But on that note, I'm gonna wind this down a little bit. One thing I was kind of like to finalize with, we talked earlier about how this podcast is really geared towards folks that are new to the outdoors, new to hunting, new to maybe firearms. And I feel like we may have touched on this a little bit, but I'll phrase it a different way. So say, you run into someone and they know you're firearms enthusiast. They know you're a hunter, and they're like, hey man, I know you do this stuff. Like maybe they've seen your videos on YouTube or something. And they're like, that looks so cool. Or here we go. Say somebody was watching John Wick they start getting interested. They look up competitive shooting on YouTube. They see your videos. They reach out to you and they say, hey, man, I really want to get into this shooting thing. I want to get into hunting, but like, it just feels like there's so much that I've got to learn before I can do this. It's really intimidating. I don't know anyone that does it. I don't know if I can do this. What encouragement or like words of wisdom would you give that person?
Yeah, look, I mean, not to be, not to sound like a cliche here, but the people that are involved in the outdoor and the shooting industry are literally some of the greatest, most generous, kind, nice people on earth. I would tell them, hey, get yourself a handgun and show up at a match. I mean, make sure you know how to keep your finger off the trigger. Make sure you've memorized the safety rules. Show up with it empty and go tell someone, hey, I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. Will you coach me through this? And you'll have a dozen people. I mean, I guarantee you'll have a dozen people who will say, yes, come shoot with me, use my gear, try this, try that, do this, do that. And they will coach you all the way through it. They want you to have a good experience.
Whoa. Haven't you heard though? Gun owners are bloodthirsty killers. No, this is not the case.
Well, I've shot all over the country. Literally at matches and competitions all over the country. I used to be on Cabela's and Leopold shooting team, and I did it, pretty much professionally for a few seasons. And I can tell you that is the case, that people have shown up before, and I've seen other shooters literally be like, here, shoot my rifle, shoot my shotgun. I've done it for people myself. I've, just donated ammo to them when they didn't have what they needed. Because it's a very people are nice. People are excited to have new faces, and people get involved. And so if you're on the fence about it, if you're not sure if you can do it, if it seems like you're overwhelmed, yeah, I mean, do some research, watch some YouTube videos. There's a ton of articles if you Google them on getting started that different people have written. But it really just comes down to going and doing it. You can watch and read about it a lot, and it won't make up for just going up and shooting a match. So yeah, don't overthink it, I guess, is the best thing I can tell you. Don't go buy a bunch of new gear. You'll find out you bought the wrong stuff. So just go up, show up with what you've got, and go ask for help. Don't be too prideful to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And everybody had to start there at some point. I still remember my first pistol match. I had no idea what I was doing, and I certainly didn't win.
Awesome, man. Well, if folks wanted to find you online, follow along with the adventures, where can they follow along?
As far as me personally, my Instagram account is where I'm most active. I'm not a huge Facebook fan. It automatically posts there sometimes, but I'm most active on Instagram, and my Instagram username is True, which is TRUE, my first name, 1911 or 1911. Honestly, as well, I mean, I'm the editor for Guns America magazine. It's a free magazine. If you go to gunsamerica.com, you can sign up for it. You'll get a magazine in your inbox. It's completely free. Same thing with hunting. We have a hunting magazine that's a monthly magazine, and there are literally thousands of articles on Guns America on how to do different things. So if you're a beginner and you need some advice, or you want to read about a gun before you buy it, there's hundreds and hundreds of gun reviews on there as well. And there's other websites as well. There's not just that one, but there's a ton of information on the internet.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on with me today. I'll make sure to link to all of that on the show notes page of the website, but thanks for taking the time out of your day, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome. Good luck to everybody that's out hunting and shooting.
All right, y'all, that'll do it for this episode of The Wild Initiative. Make sure to check out the show notes page at thewildinitiative.com. Get links to everything we talked about in today's episode. That'll do it for this week. Looking forward to next time. But until then, I hope this episode inspired you to get involved, get outdoors, and plan your initiative for the wild.
Thank you for listening to The Wild Initiative. Please take a moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher, and head on over to thewildinitiative.com to get show notes, check out the blog, gear discounts, other podcasts from the Wild Initiative family, and more.